might surprise you to hear that. I grew up in England. I was born there. I grew up there. I spent most of my life there. I spent a little time living in Canada, some time living in Spain and Scotland, and now I live here in the Netherlands. But I spent most of my life in England. Both my parents are English, and I'm saying English because a lot of foreigners mistake Britain for England. I'm talking about England, not Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland. Both my parents are English. All my family are English. My mum has done her family tree and done it over 500 years back, and it's all English. I've tried to do my dad's family tree not quite as far back as 500 years, and it's all English, not even Scottish or Irish or Welsh, English. There was supposed to be some German, a jeweler, supposedly, probably Jewish, but I can't find it. So I'm all English as far as I can tell. My last name is supposed to be Irish, but I've not traced back that far. I found no evidence of that. Maybe, probably, at some point I've got to be from somewhere else. English people all come from somewhere else. But as far as I know, I'm as pretty English in terms of my DNA as it comes. Now, on this episode, except I said before all my family are English. That's not entirely true. My brother is married to a Hong Kong Chinese lady, and they have a daughter, so half English, half Chinese daughter. And I am in a relationship with and going to get married to a lady who is Dutch and half Tunisian. So we're the only people who have married outside of the English so far. But apart from that, I'm pretty much 100% English. Now, why am I bringing that up? Now, as you may be aware if you've watched and listened to some of my previous Pecs and Politics episodes, I'm very anti-Brexit, which might surprise you for someone who's so very English. But I'm extremely anti-Brexit for many reasons. I think it's damaging. I think it's immoral, which I will argue in another episode, probably. I think it's going to be bad for the economy, and I also think it's a backward step for English development, for English culture, actually. Now, one of the questions that many people are asking, that I ask, is why are so many English people still of the Brexit mentality? Which is largely, and as I said, in previous episodes, I've been very pro-EU for many years, actually since I was in secondary school. And so I've had the discussions and the debates with so many people, at least over the last 20 years. And it's the mentality of many Brexiteers, and of course you might be completely different. You know, many people who I engage with on social media say, well, we're not all this and we're not all that, but I've yet to meet anybody who doesn't really fit in the stereotype somehow. Forgive me if I'm wrong. But one of the things is a very anti-European mentality. They might well go on holiday in Europe, to Benedict or to the south of France for the wine tastings we've discussed before. But they don't see Europe as equal. They don't see Europeans as equal people. And this is my point. I'm not going to talk about all the problems that led to Brexit. I'm going to talk about one of them today, and maybe we'll talk about others in the future. But one of the problems that English people have, not Scottish, not Welsh, not Northern Irish, English people, some English people who are very pro-Brexit, is this sense of superiority. Now, people talk about the Union of the United Kingdom, and then we also talk about the European Union. These are two very different unions. The European Union is a collection of 27 democratic countries who chose, once they become democracies, because prior to that, places like Spain and Portugal and Greece, which were dictatorships, they couldn't join then. Once they become democracies and demonstrated their democratic values, then joined the European Union. For many aims, one of them is to try and keep peace in Europe. Another is to try and help economic cooperation and growth within Europe. There are many reasons why countries wish to be part of the European Union, but it is a union of 27 equal countries. Of course, the amount of seats they get in the European Parliament differs depending on the size of the population of those countries. So yes, Germany has the most because it has the most people, not because they want to dominate Europe again, like some British people, or English people, sorry, like to remind us, or like to think is the case, because they still can't get out of their head that we're not in 1944 anymore. Each of the members of the European Union, at the Council of Ministers, also have vetoes, or if they don't have vetoes, they also have what's called qualified majority voting, which again is based on the population of those countries, which seems a fairly fair system. So these are equal countries who choose to come together. That is not how the United Kingdom came together, and it's not how the United Kingdom functions now. The United Kingdom is a collection of 4 nations, really. We can't call them countries because they're not countries, they're nations that have different powers that have been given to them by the Westminster government. They didn't have those powers until 1997, when through referenda, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland were given their own Parliament, Assembly and also Assembly. The Northern Irish one currently doesn't exist. It's been suspended for the moment, so they don't have anything right now, except from being ruled directly from Westminster. Scotland has a Parliament that has more powers than the Assembly in Wales. So again, it's unequal balance between Scotland and Wales, and certainly with England. It's an unequal union of countries, countries which by and large have been coerced into this union. When Ireland became independent, Northern Ireland was ripped away because of the predominance or the dominance of the predominantly Scottish population who'd moved over there and lived there for many generations, but the Protestant population in that part of the country, and so that stayed part of the United Kingdom. So this union was brought together not through democratic means. They didn't ask the people, do you want to? There wasn't a vote, there wasn't a referendum. These countries were not democracies when they joined England, and England wasn't a democracy when they joined to make the United Kingdom. And of course, the United Kingdom, dominated by England, particularly London, because even people in the north of England do not feel the same as people in the south, and actually many people in the north have the same complaints and concerns as people in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and are asking for greater devolution. Of course, the United Kingdom, as I say, dominated by England, had for many hundreds of years an empire. The largest empire in the world, over 50 countries, many large populous countries, India, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Barbados, Jamaica, South Africa. These countries, before it was suspended, Zimbabwe, of course, before it was suspended, many countries around the world, lots of Jamaica, lots of Caribbean islands, Trinidad and Tobago, also countries, I think Mauritius, I'm not sure, some of the islands in the Pacific as well, like Fiji is a British Commonwealth country, was in the empire as well. So all these countries are part of now the British Commonwealth, but part of the British Empire that was ruled by England, by London. They were told what to do from London. It wasn't an empire of equals. It wasn't a union of equal countries who had chosen to belong to this organisation dominated by the English. No, these countries were conquered and claimed in the name of the United Kingdom, England. People went there saying, I'm taking this, you are now ours, you will do what we tell you to do. And of course, because of the empire, slavery, of course lots of African countries are also part of the British Empire, but because we had the empire, the British involved themselves in slavery as well. Why? Because it was free labour to boost the wealth and the economy of predominantly, you got it, England. Now, is that a union of equals? No, it's not. And of course now, most of those countries are independent countries, apart from a few dependencies which Britain, England still has some power over and influence in, but in the British, most of them are now British Commonwealth members and independent states. But many of them are still living from the legacy of being part of an empire, being made to depend on just one crop, one product, because it would make that product and the wealth from that product would be sent to England, because when we were an empire, it kind of worked a bit better because they were all sending different products to England. But now they're independent. What use is just producing one product, one crop? They need to diversify. But England fucked them up. And of course, do you think that England thought of itself as equal as African people, as Indian people, as Aboriginal people, as Native Canadians? Of course it didn't. It saw them as inferior, it saw them as lesser people, it saw them as people that could be used and abused and killed and raped, literally, in some cases, for its own advantage. Now, this is the problem I have now. And this is, now we don't really have the empire. We just have a commonwealth of democratic countries, largely, who volunteer to do certain things together. But we still have the United Kingdom. And there are independence movements now in Scotland and Wales, not so much in Northern Ireland, although there's a growing sentiment within Northern Ireland that they would like to belong to the Republic of Ireland. A separate point, but related in some ways, I get a bit fed up of people calling this the SNP nationalists. Their name is the Scottish National Party. And even Nicola Sturgeon, in a recent interview, said it was unfortunate that their name was the Scottish National Party. She would have wished to have changed it, but she thought it's been their name for so long now, it's a bit late to do that. They are the least nationalist of parties that I've ever seen. Why? Yes, they are independentists. They do want to have an independent Scotland, but they embrace immigration, they embrace diversity, they want a civic-based sense of Scottish pride, not a blood ethnic-based one, which is far from the nationalistic tendencies of the English, for example, and in many other countries. Same with the Plaid Cymru vision of Wales. It is not a Welsh-only kind of mentality which nationalism tends to be. The only thing the Scottish and the Plaid Cymru want is for their countries to be independent. And I fully get it. I fully understand it. Why? Because the union of the United Kingdom is not a union of equals. It's not even a federation. As I said to you before, devolution is simply that. Power has been devolved to Edinburgh, to Cardiff and to Belfast, temporarily suspended, but equally it can be taken back. There is nothing that guarantees that those countries can keep those powers in our constitution. It's been a bit of a constitutional chaos this week, and as you know, we do not have a written constitution. That doesn't mean that parts of the constitution are not written, but it's compiled of various different things, some of which are written and some of which are not, some of which are just customs that have been used over many years. Some of it is based on the writings of people like Erskine May, for instance. But we do not have a written constitution, and the powers of the individual countries of the Union, of the United Kingdom, are not equal, and they're not guaranteed. Now, if it was, for example, that it was in Canada, and it was Quebec was wanting independence, which it does, I would perhaps understand that a little bit less, although I'm prepared, I've heard the arguments and I have some sympathy with their argument. But they are in a federation where each of the provinces have relatively equal. In fact, Quebec has slightly more powers, so it's not quite equal, but the provinces are pretty powerful. Outside of nation states, the Canadian province is amongst the most powerful regions of the world. Equally, American states have quite a lot of powers that is protected, which the federal government cannot intervene in. That doesn't happen in the United Kingdom. If Westminster wants to take away the powers from Scotland tomorrow, it could try to do it. There's nothing guaranteeing those powers. And I think this suits many English people. This is the problem. Many English people, not most, but many, and particularly not those of the Brexiteer mentality, they think they're special. And I'm not saying this with any pride. And also I want you to realise, listen, lots of countries have problems. Lots of countries have questionable histories and bad histories, particularly the European countries. But many countries have histories which are some of their moments might fill you with pride, and some of those moments might fill you with utter shame. But I'm English. I'm talking about the country I come from. And the country I come from is obviously going through some real changes right now and is going through something of a crisis right now, and I'm trying to understand, trying to get to the bottom of it. And I also did a video earlier on about cutting out the political correctness. Let's just be honest. And in fact, these series of videos I want to call the Unbearable Truth of Englishness. And the truth here is that many English people see themselves as superior. They won't say it. They might not even be fully aware of it. But many people, English people, see themselves as this almost God-given superior nation or race. Because of the empire. And because the empire was the largest. Well, you know, we had so many countries around the world. And also the United States is now a superpower, is now a very powerful country in the world. Well, you know, it was British, it's British people. It's because of their British ancestry, their British DNA, you know. In fact, many English people would rather have a relationship with America, Australia, Canada, New Zealand than with Europeans. Why? Because those Europeans, we had to go and help those Europeans out to save them from themselves. They're too incapable of looking after themselves, those strange-speaking Europeans. This is a mentality that many English people have. Why on earth do English people call themselves expatriates when they live abroad? Whether it's for a year or for 10 years or for the rest of their lives. Some of them still call them, I'm an expat. I live in Hong Kong, I'm an expat. I live in Spain, I'm an expat. No, you're an immigrant. You immigrated into that country and you are an immigrant. And the reason they don't want to use the word immigrant is they think immigrant is a dirty word. Well, I'm an immigrant in the Netherlands and I'm not ashamed of it. Yes, the experience of being an immigrant isn't always easy. It can be challenging at times, but the fact is, I immigrated into the Netherlands. Am I going to stay here for the rest of my life? Possibly, hopefully, I don't know. I might move at some point, but I don't think so. But I'm still an immigrant here, whether I'm here for the rest of my life or whether I'm not. The English do not want to associate themselves with other people. The English think they are superior. So I totally get why the Scottish want independence, why some Welsh want independence, and why some Northern Irish would rather belong to the Republic of Ireland. I totally get it. And it's this mentality that is driving this anti-European sentiment. British people, English people say, they liked the empire because it was England telling the rest of the empire countries what to do. They liked the United Kingdom because it's London, it's England telling these other countries of Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland what to do. They don't like the European Union because there they have to be equal. They sit there on an equal footing with Germany. Yes, Germany. And France. Ooh, France. And other countries that many English people probably haven't even heard of or can't even place on a map, probably. English people do not think they are equal. They think they are better than. From my experience, people who tend to have that mentality tend to be the scummiest of people in the country. That's just my opinion. I mean, how could I dare say it? Well, I did promote not being politically correct, so yeah, most of them are scum buckets and actually are probably far below most of the Europeans in terms of their level of ignorance, bigotry and likability, shall we say. So, I think you get my point. That many English people, they just don't want to be in a union of equals. They want to be in a union where they're on top, where they're superior, where they're dominant, where they're telling other people what to do. And if they're in a union of equals and they don't get what they want to throw their toys out the pan. It's not fair. They're not getting what they want. Even though England did get things that it wanted, it got exemptions. It got exemptions from the Schengen Agreement. It got exemptions from having to join the union. It's not enough. We want more. We are English. Okay. Fuck off, if that's what you want to do. I wish we could let the anchor off and just let it sail off into the sea, but we can't. It will always be part of Europe, and as such, we have to deal with it and try to understand it. And that's the first thing. I think younger people are changing. Younger people do understand that people all around the world, not just Europe, are equals. They're our friends. They're our neighbours. They are people we want to work with and not against. They're getting it. Speak to your mums and dads and grandmas and granddads. You might not change their mind, but you might make them think a little bit differently. Okay, next episode I will bring you some more on the unbearable truth of Englishness. Till then, ciao for now. This has been Pecs and Politics with me, Benedict Garrett.